episode 63 of the Habs Culture Podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz, and I'm alongside Liam Baum. And we're back. I mean, not back, but we were here last week, maybe a little over a week ago, discussing rankings in terms of left wing, right wing, and center, top five in their respective positions. We gave our lists, a few controversial takes. Those were absolutely discussed on the social media platforms, TikTok and Instagram. So we either got a lot of people agreeing with us or we had a lot of people disagreeing with us. But nonetheless, like I said, that's what we're here for, and that's what makes this all fun. And you know what? We're a week closer to the start of the NHL regular season. Today we are Tuesday, September 19th. Like I said last time, the start of the season is right around the corner. And we just keep getting a week closer, and we're starting to see a little like more tidbits of information come out about the Montreal Canadiens and what their season is supposed to look like. But today in particular, just to give you guys an idea of what's going to go down today, we're going to first chat about we're going to finish off our rankings by looking at defensemen. So not right defenseman and left defenseman, but the defenseman position as a whole, going through our top 10 defensemen each, and then going through our top 5 goalies each. And then we're going to wrap it up with a little segment revolving around the rookie tournament that just took place this past weekend in Buffalo. So there were a bunch of forward prospects and a bunch of defensive prospects and goalie prospects that took part in the rookie camp, in the 2023 rookie camp in Buffalo. Liam, do you have anything to say off the bat?
No, I think we're ready to start it off. You want to go ahead and give your... Well, do you want to go one for one, or let's just go top 10 list each?
I say maybe we go 1-1 this time.
Okay.
We go 1-1. We'll discuss it. We have a little bit more time because we're only covering 2 categories, right? So I think we can really discuss this. And I guess we'll start with the defenseman, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. So should I go from 10 to 1 or 1 to 10 here?
Let's go 10 to 1.
10 to 1. Okay. Obviously, this is going to be subject to discussion. It's going to be subject to debate, but we're going to get there. So I'm going to go my number 10 defenseman in the league as of right now, heading into the 2023-24 season, is Quinn Hughes. So I have Quinn Hughes at that 10 spot.
All right. So once again, just a reminder, this isn't based on the last 5 years, 10 years. This is going into the next season, who we think is going to have the most impactful play on their specific team.
Right. And that's also newly mentioned captain too. So if I was just to give, a little bit of background information on my decision, I think that he's undoubtedly, maybe not undoubtedly, but he's definitely up there in terms of defensemen in this league. And I think as long as he continues to work on his defensive game, because we know that his offensive game is already there. So I think that he merits that 10 spot for me.
All right. I like that. He actually wasn't on my list. So we'll
Fair
see
enough.
a couple differences. But for number 10, I've got Dougie Hamilton.
Okay.
Coming off a really good season.
For sure. And Dougie's interesting because I think that sometimes he either gets undervalued or too highly valued. But there's always a spot for Dougie Hamilton in a top 10 list. So I think that was right of you to include him there. My number 9 might be a little bit more controversial, just based off the season that he just had. But my 9 spot is Erik Karlsson. I thought that he had obviously an incredible season, 100 points by defenseman, Norris Trophy in 2022-2023. But if we're looking at his game as a whole, as a defenseman in this league, I think he merits top 10, but he's definitely not amongst the elite in terms of his defensive capabilities. So that's why I put him in the lower echelon of that top 10.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a liability on defense. But overall, if you look at the stats, when Erik Karlsson was on the ice, he definitely brought up the play of San Jose in both offensive and defensive ways. But yeah, definitely a top 10 defenseman in the league still. And he's going to get a good shot to be a Stanley Cup contender on Pittsburgh. So we'll see how that works. My number 9, maybe a bit controversial. Maybe he should be a little bit higher, but just going into next season, I've got Victor Hedman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. It seems like Sergachev's going to take a bigger step this season. And, last season we saw a bit of that. Sergachev started on the first power play. Hedman took a bit of a step back. He's still playing big minutes, but like we mentioned last podcast, we're talking about overall impact, and Hedman, I think, is going to take a bit of a step back because maybe 2 years ago we're saying he's a top 2, maybe number 1 defenseman in the league. So at number 9, I got Victor Hedman.
You know what? I don't necessarily mind it. I don't think that you're far off by, maybe underrating him a little bit versus consensus. I think you're looking at a 32-year-old who's taken a massive hit in terms of injuries too. You look back on their three Stanley Cup playoff runs, or they won two cups back to back, but then followed by another run last season. Look, they've all I'm saying is that they've been relevant for enough time for them to play more than 82 games every single season, and his body has absolutely taken a hit. So I think that might be due to age and also just wear and tear on the body. So I think that absolutely makes sense. For me, it was harder because I'll get to Hedman at one point in my rankings, and we can discuss this after. But to me, it was a little bit tougher to, you know, undermine Hedman's value and undermine what he's capable of doing, even at this point in his career. So I don't think you're too far off. I definitely disagree a little bit, but for the most part, I think you're all right. Um,
Perfect.
at number 8, I have Dougie Hamilton. So if I'm not mistaken, you had him at 10, correct?
Yeah.
So look, I like I said, I thought that he definitely belongs in the top 10. I put him at 8 ahead of two guys in Quinn Hughes and Erik Karlsson. For one, because his defensive capabilities are much stronger than those two guys. But also, I think that Dougie's all around game, like he still brings something to the table offensively, and I think that he's just a much more solid guy, solid player than those two guys. So that's why I have him at 8. And obviously, the guys that I'm going to mention after might merit a lot more praise. Like there might be a little, in my opinion, a significant teardrop, and that's including Hedman in those top 7. But anyway, I think that Dougie absolutely merits a top 10 spot, and in this case, the 8th spot in my rankings.
Yeah. I think that's a well-deserved spot. He definitely had a really good season last year on a really good New Jersey team, so he'll definitely put up the same numbers this season. Number 8 for me, I've got Erik Karlsson. So once again, coming off the Norris Trophy season, 100-point performance, gets traded to Pittsburgh, and now I obviously there's Chris Letang there, but he's still going to play, I think, that D1 role with all the injuries Letang's had. So he'll be a very significant player for Pittsburgh and will be a big contributor to their squad. So let's move on to number 7.
Yeah. For number 7, and just funny off the bat because you didn't include Quinn Hughes, but the guy that you would be replacing with Quinn Hughes in your list has not been said yet, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's definitely interesting because I'm almost like incredibly curious because I don't even have someone off the top of my head. I have a couple guys, but anyway, I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah.
At number 7 for me, and I think this is relatively interchangeable with number 6, but number 7 for me is Rasmus Dahlin. I'm a huge Rasmus Dahlin guy. I think that after this season, we might be even talking about him in the top 5. Obviously, that top 5 is incredibly stacked with this new generation of defensemen that are able to play incredible amounts of defense while also contributing offensively. But Rasmus Dahlin is already at that point, and obviously he's taken a little bit longer to, I guess you could say, not progress as a defenseman or develop as a defenseman necessarily, but he was undermined because he was a first overall pick and he wasn't necessarily contributing offensively as much as he was or as much as other guys were at his point in his career. So obviously it took a little while to get going, but now he's at the top of his game, and I think that he absolutely merits this 7th spot on this top 10 list. And after the season, like I mentioned, I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about him in the top 5.
Yeah. We're right on the same page here. I got Rasmus Dahlin too. So once again, I think he could be a top 5 defenseman. He's definitely showing the right strides to becoming that D-man number, or that top 5 D-man in the league. So yeah, not much else to say, but I think he's definitely on pace to put up another 70 plus point season. And I mean, Buffalo's looking to make a good push this season for the playoffs. So we'll see how he performs.
And he'll absolutely be a big part of that. There's no doubt. So
Yeah.
that will be interesting to see. At number 6, I have Victor Hedman. Again, like I said, it was hard for me to kind of shy away from even not putting him top 5 in my opinion. And obviously, I don't want to say it's recency bias because I think that recently, right, like this past season was honestly one of his worst in a while.
Yeah.
We talked about him as a Norris Trophy defenseman throughout basically his whole career. Did he ever get to winning a Norris Trophy? Something leads me to believe that he maybe has one, but that's probably where
Yeah,
the line draws.
I think he does. Was he the like the first defenseman in a while to win a cup and a and a Norris.
Okay, so
That might have been Makar, but I think
okay,
he did
I'm
win
gonna
one.
I'm gonna fact check it, but anyway, if you could check it out while I check it out,
Yeah,
while I
yeah.
talk about Victor Hedman. But all I'm going to say is that I think that, I still feel like the need to give him the respect he deserves. And, people at home might be saying, well, look, you're looking at the 23-24 season. It's not about what he did in the past. It's what he's capable of doing. But I still think Hedman is still playing at an elite level despite his age and despite the wear and tear on his body. And that's why I still think he merits the sixth spot. I mentioned that I think that 6 and 7 could be interchangeable. So I think that Dahlin could take that sixth spot from Hedman, going into the season. But I still think that he's comfortably inside that top 10.
Victor Hedman did win the Norris. I just cannot see what year.
Okay, that's okay. But he did win
Anyways,
one.
yeah, he did win a Norris. It should pop up in a
Oh,
second.
it's okay.
But yeah, Hedman's still definitely a huge part of that decor and very much a top 6 defenseman in the league, I'd say. Like it's all up for debate, but he's definitely still a top defenseman in the league. No doubt about that. But
Right. I mean, look, so just to pull it up, I have it here. He's been a finalist 5 times and he's only won once in 2018. So,
okay, it was
like I said,
2018.
like throughout his whole career, he's been in the conversation for the best defenseman in the league year after year. And now 2018, he finally gets his chance at winning it. Has a down season last season, but again, like obviously there's going to be a new look. Well, not new look. The core is intact, but what I mean by new look is that I don't think that this Tampa Bay team is necessarily going to be in a position to win the cup again, nor even come close this year. And I know like a lot of people like to discredit them every year and then they somehow find their way, but I think that last year was their chance to keep that role alive. And they were a first round exit last year for the first time in a while. So look, Hedman's going to be in a place to still eat big minutes. Sergachev's obviously going to take that step, but I think that there's a lot riding. I think that this team is still depending a lot on Hedman to, as a minute cruncher, as well as a, offensive contributing defenseman on a high powered power play, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Maybe with a longer summer too, he gets some more rest and comes back stronger. We'll see.
Because also, just not to I don't want to go into it too much, but it really did surprise me how Sergachev like took power play one from him at one point, and I feel like it was he was on a very short leash to start the season, right? It was like 15, 20 games in, all of a sudden Mikhail Sergachev is taking over first power play. Hedman wasn't contributing offensively like he should have been, but it was almost weird considering what like Hedman's track record, right? So that threw me off a little bit, but nonetheless, I guess you have to start moving on at some point.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you're paying a defenseman that much, like what is it, 9.5 for Sergachev or 8.5?
It's a
You
lot.
you got to utilize him. So maybe it's Sergachev taking over the reins of defenseman number 1 on the team for the future. Maybe like I don't really have a comparison here, but Mark Giordano kind of took a step back after he won a Norris.
Right.
So, anyways, Hedman's getting older. We'll see what happens, but he's definitely still the top defenseman on that team right now. Number 6 for me, I got Jacob Slavin. So defensively, probably the best defensive. I guess he's a two-way defenseman, but defensively the best defenseman in the league. Any stat, any advanced stat will show that. Super underrated just because he isn't the biggest offensive producer, but sneakily still puts up like 40, 45 points. So can't undermine the defensive play. Again, it's really hard to measure in a top 10 when you're up against all these more offensive defensemen, but I can't leave him off the list just because of the impact he has defensively and is just a step above so many other defensemen in that way.
Yeah, that's definitely that's more than valid. I think he look. I guess looking at my top 10, right, I have a couple defensive liabilities there in Quinn Hughes and Erik Karlsson, and I mean, you can argue that Slavin's defense alone, right, merits to be above Karlsson's offensive upside as a defenseman.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely merit, and I guess in my case, I definitely underrated Slavin because there's so many big names, and it's hard to measure when you're looking at a defenseman who contributes at both ends of the ice. But I think that's definitely a fair ranking for Jacob Slavin. On to number 5 for me. That was number 5 for you or number 6
That was
for you?
number 6 for me.
Right. Okay. So number 5 for me is Charlie McAvoy. I think he's taken immense strides since entering the league. I think that at this point in time, right, like we said, he's contributing at both ends of the ice, almost equally, I'd say. He quarterbacks the power play. He's very, very relentless defensively. He's a brilliant skater, and he's a very, very smart defenseman that slows down the pace of the game for a high tempo Bruins team. So I think that when healthy, right, he came off an injury, like he started the season. He didn't. Actually no. He did start the season, but last off season he was hurt.
Yeah.
So there were a few concerns about what his game was going to look like. But he came back and looked, I guess you could say, almost better than ever. And his skating wasn't affected whatsoever based on the injury that he had. So that's why I'm ranking him at number 5.
Yeah, he's super. He's just such a complete defenseman, and that's why I have him at number 5 too. So once again, Boston's going to need him to be his best, considering Bergeron and Krejci are gone. Obviously plays that power play 1 role, puts up points, just very solid defensively. I think he is that number 5 defenseman, and the top 4 here, we're probably not going to have too much debate.
Right. Yeah, I don't think so either. So you had McAvoy at number 5 too, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, so I mean, we might have a little bit of debate though.
Maybe.
Might have a little bit, but we'll see. At number 4 for me is Miro Heiskanen. I'm a big Miro Heiskanen guy. I don't know. I've just been like kind of like McAvoy. I think that they play a very similar style of game. I think that Heiskanen has a little bit of the edge because defensively he's almost like he's a magician, just like Datsuk with his hands is a magician. Heiskanen's a magician defensively, and it's honestly fun to watch him play defense, which is what we're not basing our ranking solely on, but it's a big part of what we're looking at here. So I really like Miro Heiskanen. I think that again, he benefits from playing on a very, very deep team, but nonetheless, he's literally the leader of that defensive core, and he contributes every single time he's on the ice. This guy plays almost 30 minutes a night, 25 upwards every single night, and it's a pleasure to watch because it doesn't even seem like he has such a high motor. It doesn't even look like he gets tired. And I think that that's something to that you got to attribute value to as well. So I'm a really big Miro Heiskanen guy, and that's why I have him at number 4.
Once again, we're on the same page here. Miro Heiskanen number 4. Ever since he had that playoff performance in the bubble season, I think it was, he had like 30 points or something, or 20 something points. It was ridiculous. He was like second in the league in points in the playoffs. Ever since then, I've been a huge Heiskanen guy as well. I think he does get that slight edge over McAvoy, but yeah, overall super complete player. Just really love watching him. Very underrated, I find. I think last year really showed why he was even a top 10 D-man in the league, because I think people were ranking him like under some of the guys we've named already. But yeah, Heiskanen, very, very solid defenseman. Maybe moves up to top 3 next season. We'll see. But yeah, for now, number 4.
I mean, again, like we're talking so much about his defensive capabilities, but yet he put up 73 points in 79 games. Like that's incredible. And like, yeah, you want to go back to that playoff run, just to allude to what you were talking to, 26 points in 27 games in the bubble. And then in last season, he had 12 points in 19 games. So you're looking at almost a point per game defenseman who, right, like we can talk about being, like you were saying, Slavin is the best defensively. Like I can honestly argue that I think that Heiskanen could be better defensively and contributes offensively too, right? So I think that there's no doubt in my mind that both of us having him at 4 is very, very valid.
Yeah. And in the last or 2 podcasts ago, I said Dallas was going to be the number 1 team. So Dallas is going to need him to be at his very best this season and probably take even more positive strides for them to be first in the league. So,
and it's almost like he's undervalued on his contract at $8.45 million, right? If we're ranking him inside that top 5 comfortably, for him to getting paid that, as much as it's a hefty sum in this like landscape in terms of defensemen, there's a lot of guys that are getting paid more than him that absolutely don't deserve it. So
considering Seth Jones and Darnell Nurse are making 9.5, I think it's a pretty good contract.
There you go. At number 3 for me, this might shock some, I guess, but I don't think it's even that crazy of a take. I have Adam Fox at 3. I know I'm going to assume that you have Adam Fox at 2, but the reason I have Fox at 3, it's quite simple. It's not because of Fox's lack of of production, but more because how much I appreciate Yossi and how much I think that, again, if you're looking as a pure defenseman and what he's capable of doing, while also contributing at both ends of the ice at this age too, right? He's significantly older than anyone else in this top five. So I really, really do have an appreciation for that. 2 seasons ago, he won the no, he was a finalist for the Norris
No,
or won the he
yeah,
won it, eh?
no, he lost.
Right, but I
I
think
think he lost it with
any
96
I'm
points.
right, but he had an incredible season. And
Yeah,
honestly, like if it weren't for injuries and he was able to play 82 games, I think that he would almost be point per game, every single season. And that's on a Nashville team. So to me, that speaks a lot of volume. And again, like I said, high motor, plays a ton of minutes. And again, like I put him in that top three in terms of defensive capabilities with Heiskanen and Slavin, right? So that's why I have. Oh, well, that's
yeah,
explaining
Fox
why
at
I have
number three.
Yossi at 2, but that's
Yeah,
why I have Fox at 3, and it's nothing against Fox, really.
yeah. So yeah, you were right. We flip flopped there. I got Yossi at 3, and he carries that team. He's gonna have to do it again this season with Saros, I guess, equally. But yeah, Yossi is their top point getter as a defenseman every year. Um, yeah, overall, he just carries that team. He's the captain. I don't think I don't think anybody doesn't know. I don't even know how to phrase this, but nobody doesn't like Yossi. Everyone likes him.
Yeah,
He's
he's
just
he's a likable guy. That's what
very
it is.
likable guy, plays super hard, somehow guides these Nashville teams into the playoffs. I don't even understand. Like two of the last, or whatever it was, like 2 of the last 3 years they made the playoffs, and their team just wasn't that good overall. But
No, that's
yeah,
literally what it is, right? And I mean, look, like and again, it's nothing against Fox, and I guess I'll allude to why I have Fox 3 instead of 2 is because I think that he's he does his job, but I think that he's way more offensive than a guy like Yossi. And when Yossi's putting up very similar stats, that's why I prefer Yossi at 2 versus Fox at 3 and Fox at 3.
yeah,
But
that's fair. It's
but
definitely close.
it's a flip flop.
Yeah. But in terms of preference, I think I'd prefer Adam Fox. He's very noticeable on the not saying Yossi isn't, but I find Adam Fox is super noticeable on the ice. And although they do have Zib, Panarin, Kreider, all those guys, he's still, I think, the best player on that team, arguably the best player on that team. So maybe not including Shesterkin, but
Yeah,
just
right.
overall as a skater, I think he's the best player and just the most dominant on the ice out of all those guys. Like if the Rangers didn't have Adam Fox, I don't know what they would be. So that's why I
Look,
have him at number 2.
he's been he's 25 years old and he's been almost a point per game defenseman for since 2020.
Yeah.
So there's definitely no like it's not a question of and he won the Norris 2 seasons ago, right? In 2020 when he put up 47 and 55. So it's not a question of why I don't like Fox. It's more of why I like Yossi so much. But that's the only difference for me.
Yeah.
And then number 1, I think. I mean, we'll just briefly say because it's almost as obvious to me as McDavid being number
Yeah.
1 at center, right? Like it's Cale Makar, and not to be boring or anything, but this guy just brings it all, and like he's probably one of the hardest players to play against in the league, aside from McKinnon and Connor McDavid. Like that's my take. And
Yeah.
aside from goalies too, but
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. This is maybe it's not the same as the McDavid gap, but just in terms of a concrete number 1, it's Makar. There's no debate about it. If he didn't get hurt as much as he had in the past 2 seasons, he'd probably be a 90-point defenseman. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 100 one season like Erik Karlsson did. So
right,
yeah, just
and
super
it's
dominant on the ice, best skater. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say like there's no doubt in my mind that if Erik Karlsson's hitting 100 points on a San Jose team, there's no, like I said, no doubt in my mind that Cale Makar will hit 100 on this Colorado team. He's been over point per game in every single season in his career besides 2019, 2020. But I mean, look, he's never played over 77 games, which I guess is somewhat of a cause for concern. Like 77, and then the next most is 60. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit, as long as he can stay healthy, he's undoubtedly the best defenseman in the league. But that comes with the caveat of staying healthy. And I think that's obviously going to be a concern for Cale Makar as his career goes forward, right? He's only 24. So
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
going to have to make sure that he can, maintain his health there.
Do you think Makar could score 40?
I do. 40 is a lot, but if he's going to get to 100 points, I think that's going to come with 40 goals. Because when he scored 86 and 77, he had 28.
Yeah,
So I could see 35 plus very easily. 40 is like, that's to me not out of the question, but it's like a ridiculous number, for a defenseman.
I think
But,
he would be the next defenseman to touch
hmm,
40.
not
No,
close. I don't
no
think there's a
doubt.
single. No, there's not a single other defenseman that would like come close to him aside from Carlson. And like even at that, like Carlson's not coming close. Like I'm just talking about in terms of pure offensive upside.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's about it. But okay, so I look, we're relatively in line. Obviously, there's a couple of guys that you brought, or one guy that you brought in that I didn't have, and vice versa. But that's the fun of it. So let us know what you guys think of those rankings. We're gonna head on to goalie, and we only ranking our top five, Liam, here, right? Because we're
yeah.
not gonna go top 10 for
No.
goalie. But I say we each give our list this time, one by one, and then, or you know what, you want to do the same way we did with the defenseman?
Yeah, we could do that too. I really feel like there's going to be no debate here. Maybe not in terms of the rankings, but just in terms of who the goalies are.
I think there might be one because I know there's one
One.
that you don't particularly love that I like a little bit more.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll let you kick it off.
All right. Number 5, I got Connor Hellebuck. Not
Oh,
much
okay.
debate. Yeah. So
I
did
thought
you
you
think
didn't
I
love him
didn't?
like
Yeah.
that.
I got to be fair. Hellebuck, yeah, maybe didn't have the best last 2 years, but before that, he was super dominant. And like, maybe I'm going back on stats from previous seasons. Like I said, I wouldn't, but at the end of the day, Hellebuck is a very solid goalie, and I think undoubtedly a top 5 goalie in the league.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, I love Hellebuck. I think that if you're looking at and I have him number 5 as well. But if you're looking at that Winnipeg Jets team, the reason that they've ever had success, and they haven't had a ton of it, they've been in a little bit of a weird spot because they've always been a competing team, but have never got over that edge aside from the time that they went to the Western Conference Final. Well, they made it to the second round against Montreal, but I'm talking about the Western Conference Final where I think
Yeah.
Vegas ended up winning the cup.
Yeah.
But
Well, was it Vegas who won the cup or Washington won the cup? But they played
Washington won
Vegas.
the cup, but they played Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. But anyway, all that to say is that I think Hellebuck has been consistently the best player on that Winnipeg Jets team. And it's not even particularly close, in my opinion. Obviously, they have a ton of great guys, but I don't think it's come close. And the reason that he's like, this guy's playing back-to-back nights sometimes because they're so dependent on him as a player, and he's always at his best. And obviously, he's had a couple seasons where he's been subpar, but even those subpar seasons are considered elite in the minds of a lot of people. So that's why I have him at number 5 as well.
Yeah, and I think he's only one of the only goalies who plays like 60 games a season. So
It's insane. It's insane.
yeah, it's really insane. But
You want to get us with your number 4?
yeah, number 4, I've got I really really love this guy, UC Saros. So I think he can honestly be the number 1 goalie in the league if he was on a better team. It's hard to say. It's very hard to rank goalies because a lot of it relies on team play. But Saros, like Yossi, they carry this team together. And without him, Nashville would be in the absolute dumps. He's just, you saw when it was 2 seasons ago when they played they made the playoffs and played against Colorado. Saros went out with injury and they just got clobbered. So yeah, number 4, just super consistently good goalie. Undersized, but clearly it doesn't matter because his athleticism carries him.
I want to tell you one stat about UC Saros that might blow your mind. Aside from 2015-16, where he only played one game in the NHL and he lost, every season after that, so from 2016 to 2023, he's had a winning record with the Nashville Predators every single season.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
I guarantee, and to your point, the reason for those stats for Nashville and the reason that it's because of him. Mm-hmm. It's because of him, and he's just so dominant. And last year he played 64 games. The season before that he played 67. He won almost 40 games in 2021 or 2021-22, and 22 last year he won 23. He won 33 games. So this guy's pushing 30 wins a season on a Nashville team that has been very, very mediocre. They made the playoffs 2 years ago. Last year they didn't, but I mean, very mediocre, right? Like they were a first round bounce in 2 seasons ago. So
yeah, and he didn't play.
Oh, right. Did he not? Wait, why didn't he play?
He was injured right before the playoffs started.
Oh, okay. So that also speaks volume.
They
I
got
honestly forgot
swept,
about that. Right. Yeah. I think I forget by who, but
Colorado.
oh, it might have been okay, right. Okay, so yeah, that rings a bell, and I remember a lot of people were nervous. So I honestly forgot that. But anyway, that season I think he was a Vesna candidate
Yeah.
that season. He top three, didn't win. I think they gave it to Fleury in the
Yeah.
end. But anyway, whatever. Honestly, incredible goalie. Undoubtedly top five. We're in line with one another so far. So good.
Yeah. Number 3, I got Vasilevsky. So last season, I guess even the last 2 seasons, during his regular season, he wasn't anything spectacular. Nothing compared to the seasons before that, but you can't argue that he's not in the top 3 just because of how dominant he is when it gets to the playoffs. The stat where it was like he hadn't lost back-to-back games in 3 years in the playoffs is like ridiculous. Every time they would lose, he'd come back and have like a shutout. His goals against were like under 1. So still a super, super good goalie. A huge part of that Tampa team. The guy looks like 6'7" in the net. His gear is so big, you just can't score on him. But yeah, undoubtedly top 3. Definitely could be number 1, but I don't know how Tampa's going to be this season. So we'll see how he turns out. But yeah, can't argue that Bassey's still a top 3 goalie in the league.
Yeah, I disagree, but I understand your point, and I'm not. Oh, anyway, I'll just give you my number 3, and we'll talk about it after. I
Yeah.
have Shesterkin number 3. Um, I I agree with you in terms of where Vazzy's at in his career, and I think I was honestly debating putting him 3 as well, Vasilevsky. But I just couldn't get myself to do it. I don't know why. I just couldn't get myself to do it because again, I don't like to go off based off just pure stats, but again, like this team, maybe a little bit less than like in Saros's case, for example, but has literally been like one of the biggest reasons that they've been successful both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And, 30 plus wins every single season, starts about 55 to 60 games every single season, always posts over a 915 save percentage, always posts under like a 2-5 goals against or 2-6 goals against for the most part. So like, yeah, so like I just think that he's impressive, and it's just become a standard for him to be so impressive that people are just taking his talent for granted almost. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you're doing that because 3 is still a phenomenal ranking, but like he's still elite, and he's still 29 years old, and goalies there's a little bit of longevity there. So I think as long as he's in the net, Tampa's going to be relevant, and that's my take on Vasilevsky, and that's why I have him 2 over Shesty. I love Shesty. I think Shesty's one of the best individual goalies in the league. If not, no, I'd say the second best individual goalie. So looking aside from team, but that sometimes gets baked in, right? Like it
Yeah.
comes with the ranking. But Shesty had a great season 2 seasons ago. Wasn't going to be able to top a 940 save percentage because that's just absurd.
Mhm.
Had still a solid season last year, but took a little bit of a step back. Let's see what he can do this season. But still a top 3 goalie for me.
Yeah. Number 2, I've got Sorokin. So this guy,
Oh, wow. I thought we were completely like, okay.
yeah. So yeah, I got Sorokin, but this is a similar case to Saros where he's on such a dust team that maybe his numbers take a hit, but it's still crazy that he's maintaining like a 920 save percentage, and whatever his goals against is probably like 210 or something. Anyways, when he's in the net, the Islanders are actually a good team, which is so surprising. I wonder I don't know what his record is, but he probably had like 30 something wins last year and like 10
31
losses. How many losses did he have?
22.
22. Okay. I was a little off, but he's still way over 500, and his stats are just absolutely absurd. But if you ask me, who do I want as my starter between Shesterkin or Sorokin, I'm going Shesterkin.
I'm not gonna lie. I think it's kind of bold. I like it. Like I'm not again like any of those guys in the top 3, all Russian by the way, which is pretty cool. But will single handedly win you games at different points of the season. So like you can't knock the argument. For me, you had 2, right? You had Sorokin at 2. So our top 3 is the same 3 players, completely different order, which is really, really interesting. But for me, like looking at Sorokin, and again, if there's one reason that the Islanders are good, it's because of Sorokin. He's had he had a 918 in his first season with the Islanders, a 925 in his second, and a 924 in his third. He's posted under a 9.4 goals against every single season. Again, starting an absurd amount of games. And I just think that, again, you take Sorokin out of that net in New York, and you're looking at a bottom 5 team in this league, no doubt in my mind.
Maybe, but 2 years ago, Varlamov was a Vezina candidate, or wasn't he
Right,
a
but
Vezina candidate?
right, I don't know about Vezina, but he was more. I'll get his stats right now, but look, I mean, like, yes, okay,
I'm
sure.
not taking that, and I'm not taking that away. Like, Sorokin now is clearly the number one, and Varlamov's the backup. But I think
I know, but can I chime in here for a
yeah,
second? Like,
yeah,
yes, he was a Vezina candidate, but we're also looking. I'm not going to call it an anomaly of a season, but Varlamov posted a 930 with a 2 goals against. Like, that's ridiculous.
yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. And I'm not like, I'm just saying that that team specifically, and then I'll let you say something, is that they're going to depend heavily on goalie play. And if Sorokin's delivering that product year after year after year since he's been in the league, then that's why he's the best for me. That's my
Okay.
take.
Okay. I just think having a good backup helps your starter maintain his play. And that's just not the case with a team like Tampa and the Rangers, where when their backup's in, they're probably at even odds when they play like the Red Wings or something in the past years. So
Right.
that's why I just think Sorokin is number 2. I mean, it's just very hard to argue. If hypothetically, if Russia's in the Olympics, who's your starter out
Yeah.
of those 3?
Who's your starter?
Yeah.
Who's your starter? That's insane. Look, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, look, if you look back to last season, Varlamov played 23 games. He posted a 913 save percentage. Like, those are very serviceable as a backup and almost merit starter positions on a lesser team, right? So, like,
Yeah.
obviously Lambert, like, it went from Trotz to Lambert, and obviously Lambert's is kind of like, everyone thought that he was going to go ahead and push a very offensive game plan and try and incorporate Matt Barzal and now Bo Horvat, but clearly they still have stuck to their defensive ways. And maybe it's just a product of the fact that they have a very, very strong decor, as well as, maybe not in your case, I guess not the best, but a top 3 goalie in this league. Like, maybe he just wants to stick to that game plan. And maybe that's why they continue to get wins and stay somewhat relevant. But I still think that taking Sorokin off that team, if we're looking strictly at what that player contributes to that team, you're really taking a lot of wins away from the New York Islanders.
Yeah.
But,
So, yeah, number 1, I got Shesterkin, and I mean, you just can't argue against those stats. He's just so good when he's playing well. Last year, he dealt with a bit of injury, if I can remember correctly. I mean, I don't think he
started
missed that many
58
games.
games, so I don't know how. I don't like. Usually, he'd probably start like 65 or something.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I don't
so.
know I don't know if something was nagging, but when he's on his game, I think he's the best goalie in the league. But just going back to it, I think hypothetically, Russia's starting Vasi in the Olympics. That's just my take. Doesn't make him the
Yeah,
best goalie, but
just based off of pure like track record too, right? Like, you
yeah,
got to get like and realistically, if there's one guy that it's going to be their last Olympics, it would be Vazzy versus the other two, right? Both, Shesterkin being 27 and Sorokin being 24, 25 or
yeah,
whatever it is. So,
yeah,
I mean, look, yeah, you can't argue with Shesterkin's numbers. I mean, 12 games in 2019, 2020, but 932. Then 916 follow that up with 35 games played. Then a 935 with 53 games played. Like, a 935 is beyond ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Beyond ridiculous. And
It's like
obviously,
it's like Allmark numbers, but his team was not as good as Boston. So
right. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, gotta give it to him. But nonetheless, our top 5 players are the same. So I guess it showed. And by the way, we did not talk about our rankings before we went into doing this. So I guess that brings that makes it fun too.
yeah,
All right. So that was cool. We wanted to talk a little bit about the rookie tournament for a second?
yeah, we can mention it. Both of us couldn't really catch all the games they were on in the afternoon, but a couple standouts included Josh Roy, who had a good tournament. Or first of all, the Canadians went 2-1 in the 3 games they played, so not too bad right there. But yeah, a couple standouts. Josh Roy had a really good game. Logan Mailloux had a terrible first game, but in the second game he played very well, according to some of our sources. Any other guys?
So like I mentioned to you before, Liam, I had a buddy that was at the tournament, so got to see like a few games, which was cool. I'm not going to go through every single player that he mentioned because he gave me an awesome report. But for the bigger names, like Mayu had a really bad game one, a much better game two, so that was obviously something nice to see. But I think a lot of people can agree right now that he's definitely not NHL ready. So people that are speculating that he's going to show up to camp and take a spot away from the 6 guys that are there right now is kind of crazy. So I
Yeah.
think that we should temper expectations for now. Other than that, I heard that Massar was actually relatively concerning in his play. Not I know it's year 2, but not even showing any flashes of being, a first round, borderline second round pick here. Which is concerning because it doesn't look like he's grown too much. It doesn't look like his game has changed too much, which kind of sucks because you try to find those gems at the back end of that first round. But I guess that wasn't in the cards or isn't in the cards so far for Philip Machar. Other than that, I think there were a couple guys that stood out. You mentioned Roy. We talked about Beck. Heineman looked pretty good. And I guess the one that stood out to a lot of people was Touringy. Also, I don't know if it's Michel or Mikael Touringy, but small right hand defenseman, incredible skater. So that was cool to see because not like we need another right shot defenseman, but it's always nice to have them at our disposal. So that was cool too. But aside from that, not many. I think Liam, I'm
Will
gonna say
Trudeau?
this. Yeah, Will Trudeau as well. He's a forward, an undersized forward, but I think that he plays a very aggressive game as well.
He's a 4. I thought he was a defenseman.
So did I, and I thought it was Touringy and Trudeau flipped, but yeah,
He was the captain, eh? Yeah, he was.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I was gonna
He's
also.
a defenseman. He is a defenseman.
So then I'm thinking of someone else at forward. Then,
Are you thinking of Simino?
yes, it's
He
all
was
these
solid.
French names.
A lot of the French
throwing me
names,
off.
but yeah. This report says Jan Mishak had a solid tournament. So
He did. I just don't think that there's ever gonna really be like a place for him
yeah,
on this team, unfortunately.
like if it comes down to Heineman and Mishak, I guess you're taking Heineman at this point. But
Right.
at least the AHL might be a pretty good team this season. Hopefully, we see
Right.
some success in Laval.
But here's something that I'll tell you, Liam, and I think it's really concerning, and I guess we'll leave it on this note, is that this Montreal Canadiens team, or I guess prospect pool, does not have top end forward talent. And it sucks to see because we've had 2 drafts now. And again, Slavkovsky's obviously quickly made the jump to the NHL. So I guess you can't really, categorize him as a prospect at this point. I guess we have to see how. Oh, sorry, just got a trade.
Oh wow!
As we're
Canadians.
on air, Montreal Canadiens send Casey DeSmith and receive Tanner Pearson and a 3rd round pick.
Okay,
That's
interesting.
with what team? Where's Tanner Pearson at right now? Is it
Vancouver?
Is it Vancouver or is it the Pens? I don't know.
Tanner
Hold on.
Pearson is on Vancouver. So
Okay. Vancouver.
interesting for Vancouver. Why they have Mikey DiPietro, but
Right. Okay. Well, that's
Interesting.
interesting. I mean, you know what? Again, for Casey DeSmith to get a 3rd round pick and I guess a roster player is really not bad.
3rd round pick for free, and maybe we flip Tanner Pearson. Who knows? But
Yeah, seriously.
Well,
But
solid.
sorry, all of that to say is that I think that like the Montreal Canadiens are going to have to do a lot of, again, is it going to be another bad season where they're going to pick inside the top 10 or top 5 and pick a forward? Because the Montreal Canadiens had the chance, and we talked this at length. They had the chance to pick Matvey Michkov, didn't pulled the trigger on Reinbacher, which is totally okay. And I don't think that that either of us dislike that pick. But at what point are you going to say that this decor is going to be A1? But if you can't put the puck in the back of the net, then
we're going to be the Islanders.
Games?
We're going to be the Islanders.
Right.
So yeah. Casey DeSmith's highlight of his Habs career is the golf tournament.
Yeah.
Hopefully he hit a par.
I watched or I looked at that picture and like I almost forgot that we had Casey DeSmith, and I was like, who is this guy?
There were so many guys there that just aren't gonna crack the lineup. Like Elias Anderson was there.
I know. I honestly again forgot that he was on the team.
And Gustav Lindstrom.
Right, who's also not going to play a game realistically.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys, but
a lot of defensemen.
Yeah, a lot of defense. All that to say though, looks like we have our goalie tandem Jake Allen and Samuel
And
Montembeault.
well, put them in the order that they're in, Montembeault and then
Montembeault
Jake
number
Allen.
one. Yeah. Well, we'll
I
see.
think
We'll
so.
see.
But I don't know. You know what? Like, again, if we're looking towards the future, I do think that this Montreal Canadiens team definitely lacks a star player at forward, because right now, and disagree with me all you want, but I'm staying true to this, I don't think the Montreal Canadiens have a bona fide point per game player in this league. I don't. I
At this
really,
point,
really don't.
yeah. At this point, no. But hopefully, like in the future, I just can't see a player like Caulfield being on the second line. So maybe
No,
Suzuki's a second line center, but at least we have a guy that can score goals.
no, right. I'm not saying that in like a negative. Like, I guess I am adding a negative connotation to it. Excuse me. But what I am saying is that, like, you don't need an 100-point player to win the cup, right? You saw that with St. Louis, and you even
Oh, that
saw
was
that with
Vegas.
like Vegas, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not a must. But all I'm saying is that if Suzuki caps out at 75 points, and if Caulfield caps out at 75 points, because he probably has the 40 goal upside and the 30 point or the 30 assist upside, like, and Doc probably has 60 to 65, maybe 70 point upside, like, no shame on that, because it's very, very well balanced. But if you add that one player that can get you 90, right? Like, that's a scary top six.
Yeah,
That's scary.
for sure. I mean,
But again, it's not a necessity.
we definitely don't have that prospect that's got that potential right now. Like, if you're including Slavkovsky, I don't think Slavkovsky is going to be a 90-point player, but if you're including him in that talk, we still don't have that player. So
No.
hopefully, if we do finish very poorly again this season, which I don't know if that will be the case, but most likely will be the case, hopefully we can grab a forward. But again, another concerning thing, I don't want to get into it too much, but 9 of the top 15 prospects right now, based on Bob McKenzie's rankings for 2024, are defensemen. So
Right.
what's the plan?
So it also begs the question. It's like, well, how much foresight is there? How proactive is this brass being, considering that if next year there's, like you said, 9 out of the 15 top prospects as of right now are defensemen, well, then why didn't maybe they go the forward route this year, trade back, whether it's to pick Matvei Michkov, who we really, really wanted, or even if it was to pick I'm blanking on his name now, the guy that went to Washington. I liked him too out of the USNDP. Blanking on his name.
Ryan Leonard.
Ryan Leonard, thank you. Like, why wouldn't they maybe? Because you got to be anticipating another season where you're maybe not bottom 5, but you're not going to be top 15 in the league either. You're not.
I mean, look at Jaeger. He had an insane rookie tournament,
Right.
definitely showing crazy offensive upside, and he slipped in the draft. Same for Zach Benson, had a crazy tournament, and those are just guys we missed out on because we were really stressing that we needed a right-handed defenseman when we're not competing this year, and there's more than a handful of them next year. So it's
Like,
hard to see. It's hard to see what the plan is.
And like, we already have a log jam at right D right now, right? Like, Justin Barron is realistically going to be in this lineup, because I'm not saying that it's now or never, but like, I feel like the longer that this process goes on, where he's in and out, in and out, in and out, then at one point you're going to have to move on, because there's so many players that could take his spot, like with the snap of their finger, finger, right? So I'm just like, I'm concerned that it's like, yeah, Reinbacher is going to come in here and, hopefully be a first, if not like worst case scenario, a second pairing defenseman on that right side. But how much longer can we just continue to accrue all these right-handed defensemen and these defensemen in general to have, debatably maybe the best defenseman prospect pool in the league, but to have an offensive or a forward core that's just, meh, I guess.
Yeah. Unless we're going out and signing a bunch of guys, but that's not going to happen. Like, the Canadians are just not known for signing guys like that. So,
yeah. I was going to just ask you a quick question off the top. Like, do you think if the Montreal Canadiens, let's say, finish bottom 10 next season, have a top 10 pick, hopefully targeting a forward in this case, do you think that there's any chance that maybe, like, depending on the strides that a lot of these guys took this year, like this coming season, maybe Kent Hughes and their brass goes out and signs a free agent? Like, and I know you don't win. I know you don't win this league through the free agency, but if Nylander somehow gets to free agency, right? Like, and wants money, or if it's, I know there's a bunch of big names, so I don't know them off the top of my head, but you think that's in the cards?
Personally, I think it's more likely that we trade the pick for a guy that's in the age range of Caulfield and Suzuki, rather than going out and signing someone. Just because the Habs when was the last time we signed a top 6 forward? I
because no one
honestly
wants to
couldn't
play
tell.
for us though, right?
Yeah, it's like when you get here, when you get drafted and you get grown through this development process, you want to be here, but no one wants
Right.
to come here.
Well,
That's the
dude,
problem.
I mean, we asked Tavares for an interview. He declined the interview. Obviously, inevitably, he was going to end up in Toronto because that's where he wanted to play. But like the fact that there's a lot of these players that are just unwilling to come here is already a red flag in the first place. So we're going to win this league. We're going to win the cup by building through the draft and by building through development. And the problem is that if we're banking on young raw players and don't develop them properly, then we're at a roadblock. Like then
Yeah.
we're never getting anywhere.
But to me, it's even more concerning that we couldn't even get like our hometown guys, like the rumors with Huberto. I don't know if we made an offer. Obviously, we don't
And
have the
Dubois,
information. And exactly, I was getting to Dubois. It's like it's sad that we can't even get our hometown guys to come here. So
and then
yeah,
it's sad that we can't even retain a guy like Radulov when he's one guy that wanted to play here.
yeah,
Or like like Toffoli was different because we traded him and it made more sense. But like there's only a handful of people that like Domi was happy to be here. Like we're shipping out all these guys, and again, there's obviously an advantage to doing so, but it begs the question like there's only so many people that want to play here, and then when they come to play here and then they leave, and it's like we
yeah.
can't retain them. Like
Yeah.
it's what
There's
I don't
wasted
know.
potential because it's the same case with Lehkonen. Like his whole career in Montreal, the guy's a 30-point player, not getting any minutes. He goes to Colorado. Obviously, there's Nathan McKinnon. Obviously, there's Mikko Rantanen. And he puts up 60 points, scores the two biggest goals in Colorado's history to win the cup. Like, it's disappointing to see. So, all that to say, I don't think we're signing anybody because it's just not in the Habs what's the word? It's just not in their history that they sign a guy that'll come and make a huge difference. It's more through the draft. But then again, we're seeing stuff like trading for Dak and trading for New Hook. Hopefully they come in and make a difference. So I wouldn't be I wouldn't be super surprised. I mean, I'd be a little surprised if we trade our pick this season, but at the same time, I think Ken Hughes wants to build a core around the same age of all those guys, like 22, 23 years old. So if we go out and acquire a guy in that age range that's a top six forward, I wouldn't be too surprised if we gave up on our pick. Just because how much longer can we develop guys for? Right. So I think we're
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
that.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I guess that obviously makes for a very, very 2023-24 season. Look, and we're definitely going to jump back on here because, again, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're right around the corner. We're at the 52-minute mark, so we're obviously going to call it here. But again, as I always say, let us know what you guys want to see. We're going to try and be semi-consistent, especially during the season, because I think it's way more fun that way. And it allows you guys to, tune in and hear about, a few games a week and where players are at and where they sit in terms of our power rankings because, I don't know. It's either the Montreal Canadiens are either going to stay competitive or they're going to be completely terrible again. But either or, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First
anything
game
you
is
want to say?
first
Yeah.
game next Monday versus the Devils. It's going to be exciting to see that the Habs training camp roster still hasn't released. The only team to not release theirs yet. So
Hmm.
maybe there's a couple PTOs in there, but yeah. Other than that, I think that's
And
about it.
just to fast forward a bit here to the start. Do you know what day the regular season starts?
I believe it's October 10th for the Canadians.
Right. No. I think it might be the 11th, 10th for a few other
Yeah,
teams. 11th for the
11th for the
Habs
Canadians.
against the Leafs in Toronto, so it doesn't get any more classic than that.
We'll be
But
back before that though,
oh, oh,
definitely.
oh, we'll be
So
back 2 times before that. But just to throw it out there for excitement purposes because it
yeah,
is right around the corner.
yeah,
So anyway, guys, we appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Let us know what you guys want to see. Make sure to check out the socials. Habs culture, one word on pretty much everything. So check that out, and we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks a lot,
thanks
guys.
guys.
Take care.